So back I have another Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, note to the page. Let's get started. This time, it is a deck that I find very fun. It is very cheap. It is Witches. So if you don't know, in the latest set VBT 12, I think, Divine Lightning Radiance, it came out with the archetype of Witches for Genesis. And I forgot if, actually, yeah, Witches did used to exist in Genesis, but they weren't very prominent at some point. Or at least to my knowledge, they weren't very prominent. And this time, they've come back as a really, really good budget deck. And when I say budget deck, I mean if you were to go card by card in this deck profile and put it into your TCG player cart, I promise you, it will be less than $20. No joke. Mine is actually $17. It was originally $13, but stuff got taken away because people were buying all the cards, so it eventually added up to $17. But in its original form, it is $13, and I promise you it will not go over 20 unless something bad happens. Either way, deck is amazing, it's fun to play, and it's extremely cheap. So if you're looking to main Genesis and want a fun budget deck to start off your thing, this is the deck for you. Now let's get this started. If you can't tell, I have a lot of passion for this deck. First up, my starter, Incipient Longtail. So 6k base, auto when wrote upon, you get to draw a card, and then if your opponent's Vanguard is greater 1 or greater, you get to put a quick show ticket into your hand. So this is basically the standard starter. You can get an extra draw. I have top decked from this so many times. I know every starter has this, or most starters have this, but it's just the fact that I keep drawing into my grade 3 more often in this deck than I do into other decks just by this effect alone, that I'm starting to think it's not random chance, but still, I've top decked from this a lot. And then the quick show ticket is mainly there for discard fodder. There are 2 cards in this deck that I remember that involve discarding. One's a PG, one's a grade 1. And it doesn't really do anything else, but it still counts as the 5k shield. And I originally hated the quick shield, but after these last few days where the quick shield has actually come and saved my ass multiple times with the 5k guard, I have grown to respect it slightly more. Not much, but still more, which is better than before. Now on to the triggers. For our triggers, we run 6 crits. Why 6 crits, you ask? Here's why, and why are each of them at 2? So the reason is, if you don't know, Genesis now has exactly 4 different critical triggers, and if you run them out 4, you can just run 16 crits and not face any repercussions from it. But I don't want to run the crits on this deck, because I don't want to put it in a deck that isn't Fenrir related, since back in G era, that critical trigger, I believe its name is Thiddy, is used to be a support card for Fenrir, and even though it's not now, I still count it as a support card for Fenrir. So I'm not going to use that in a non-Fenrir based deck. So we have, which leaves us with 3 crits, and since I want the deck to be balanced in terms of triggers, we run 2 copies of each crit. So 2 of 2 copies of Cyber Tiger, 2 copies of Mercury of Gravities, and 2 copies of Battle Maiden Kukukuri Hime. So, and then the deck just sees crits every now and then. You mostly solo charge them in my scenarios. Then again, this deck doesn't need crits, so if you see a crit, your opponent's probably already dead, but it's nice to have them in just in case you need them. And then for draws, we have 6 draws as well, 2 Talisman Angel, and 4 White Emperor Witch Prizime. So if you can't tell, this deck needs as many witches as possible. This is the only other witch I could find besides this one, Witch of Big Pots Laurier, that are triggers. So this deck focuses on calling witches. I swear everything else in this deck is a witch. It's just the triggers that aren't. But still pretty good cards. And this trigger lineup works because sometimes you need draws. In the very off scenario that you need crits, which I did for a long time because I misplayed with this deck so much. And I will explain that at the end of this, and I'm retaking this video. I'm not joking. I've genuinely done this deck profile before, and I'm retaking it because I know what my misplay is. But on to grade 1s. First up, 2 copies of Supportive Sorcerer Communists, aka Communism. 8k base, auto Vanguard circle in place, put a card from hand into your soul and draw a card. Never mind, it doesn't discard it, put to the soul. And then auto rearguard when placed, soul charge 1, then if your opponent's if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, soul charge 1 and one of your Vanguards gets +5 till end of turn. So he's really good for as an on-ride target because you get an extra draw and you get to send something to soul, and this deck does need soul. And that's really helpful. It can get you resources for later, and it can possibly set you up a draw once more. Another card that I constantly top deck with But the other effect, you get technically 2 soul charges if you wait till grade 3 to call it, and then something gets +5, which is really good. I like to mainly call him to rear because it gives you more soul, and yeah, you lose out on the extra hand card, but it gives you more soul anyways. And there are some chances where I'll have to ride him because he's the only grade 1 in my hand, but he's not the worst thing to ride, and he's kind of good. So 2 copies. Not the worst card, but not the best card either. Still amazing though. Now, 4 copies of Pure White Witch, Salty. Before I continue with this, you may wonder, why is this the PG and not Battle Maiden of something, Kusinada, the draw PG? Well, here's why. This is a witch and she isn't. That is my genuine reason. So, in this deck, you can technically bounce... Well, you can get stuff back to hand that are witches. So, since Kusinada isn't a witch, and this is, might as well have a recyclable PG. So, for some reason, if you do call it to rear, for whatever goddamn reason that is, you can get it back. Like, rushing your opponent or calling it to fulfill a cost. You can just get it right back and not have to face any repercussions. Or you made a very bad misplay and it was on accident and your opponent wouldn't let it take you back, so you just bounced it back to hand and you just use the cost on it. Either way, onto the actual effect of the PG. It's a Sentinel, so you can only run 4. When placed on guard circle, you can discard a card and one of your units can't be hit till end of battle. And finally, auto Vanguard circle, when placed, draw a card and discard a card. So, really useful. It's a free draw and then you have to discard for it. So if you have to ride this on top of Inside Peasant Longtail, I forgot how to say his name already. You get to draw a card from Longtail, get a quick shield hopefully, and then you draw a card from Salty, and then you discard another card. And it's just really good. 4 copies, and it's a witch. Next up, 4 copies of Late Bloomer Sorcerer, Palmet. So, AK base, auto rearguard circle at the end of the battle that it boosted Morning Grey Sorcerer Ashwa, Soul Blast 1 to draw a card. So that's pretty good. You just get a free Soul Blast and you get to draw. The Soul Blast does kind of hurt this deck when soul charging, but like I said, I thought that when I was making a very stupid misplay and no one corrected me up until after I did this deck, which is why I'm redoing it. But let's just say this card is very helpful, especially with the card that it has to boost for the skill to go off, because this and the card it has to boost are part of my main grade 2 rush / just every turn combo. So, nice card. 4 copies. And final grade 1, Spring Source Witch Feces. So 8k base, auto Vanguard or rear. This ability's cost may be paid by Soul Blast 1 if the grades of you and your opponent's Vanguard are the same. When placed, Counterblast 1, look at top 4, reveal up to 1 card with Sorcerer or Witch in its card name from among them, put it to your hand and put the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. This is the other reason why the PG is Pure White Witch and not Kusinada, because you can just get a free PG now, and that's really good. And it's also can be paid by Soul Blast cost if you're running out of Counterblast. This deck is Counterblast heavy. It is not Soul heavy at all. You can straight up just get it from Soul and then just benefit from it, so there's no reason to be afraid to use the Soul Blast cost. And it's just a decent card, so 4 copies. On to grade 2s. The card that I've used exactly once and then never used again. 3 copies of Falling Star Sorcerer Vine. 10k base, auto rearguard circle. When placed, discard a card from hand, choose a normal unit from your soul, and return it to hand. Another reason why Pure White Witch is the PG and not Kusinada. Because now, if your PG's in soul, whether you had to ride it or you accidentally soul charged it, guess what? You can get it back now. More reasons why Pure White is better than Kusinada. And it's just a good card, so 3 copies. And then 4 copies of the thing I was talking about earlier with Palmet. Morning Grey Sorcerer, Ashwa. 10k base, auto rearguard circle at the end of the battle that it was boosted by Late Bloomer Sorcerer Palmet. Put this unit to soul, get a Force Gift, and put it on the Vanguard circle. So, it's an Astro Poet card, basically. And that is part of the reason why Witches and Sorcerers aren't that good, because they're mainly Astro Poet support cards. But this doesn't require your Vanguard to be an Astro Poet, which means you can just run this in this deck, get a benefit because it's a Witch / Sorcerer, and then you get an extra Force Gift. I remember the first time I used this deck where I rushed out 2 Ashwas, and then I threw down 2 Palmets behind them on the rear guard circle, and I attacked, and the Vanguard just got 2 Force Gifts immediately. Rode next turn, I had 3 Force Gifts, and then it's just unguardable. And then not to mention the one time that I fucked over my opponent where I did Force 2, I placed it on the van and I just killed them in one go. Really good card. 4 copies, nice combo with Palmet, because you can basically put it to Soul, get a Force Gift, then if you want to use Palmet to go to Soul Blast, you can just Soul Blast this and draw a card. So 4 copies. Next up, 4 copies of White Phosphorus Sorcerer, Revolta. Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed, counterblast 1, reveal 3 cards from top of deck, put up to 1 from among them to hand, and put the rest into your Soul. Also 10k base. So that's really good. You just get to see the top 3. You have to pick a normal unit. More reason... Oh, sorry, it's just 1 card. Never mind, but still. You can get anything you want from that, and then shove the rest into Soul, and that is just good because you're getting more Soul, you're getting more hand cards, and all it does is cost a counterblast, and you can loop this with one of the grade 3s. So 4 copies. And on to the grade 3s. 4 copies of Spiritualist Sorcerer Kraut. Auto, Vanguard, or Rearguard. When placed, Soul Blast 1 for each of your units, includes this unit. So if you just call this to rear and everything else is full, you just get a free Soul Charge 6. It's that simple, and it's really good. And if you want, I don't suggest it, because you can just kill your opponent a lot faster with this deck build. If you think your deck, or your version of this, has too much counterblast cost, or like, you run out of counterblast way too early, you can put in this card, I believe it's called Dream something Witch. It has a tiger in the background with a witch on it, and basically it's a Soul Blast 15 to countercharge 5. I don't put that in because that's a Soul Blast 15 that can't be reduced by any means, shape, or form, so I don't use it. I prefer this card, but if you want to put that in the countercharge 5, you can put it in, but I like this one because it just allows for easier wash. Now, for the card I keep talking about, and for the cards that I misplayed with every time I use this deck, but I still won. I still won every time I misplayed. I just am stupid and I never realized it. 4 copies of White Rainbow Witch, Pyretha, or Pythra. Okay, her skill. Well, first off, 13k base, Force Gift, the only grade 3 witch that has a Force Gift, so if you didn't run this, you're stupid. Act Vanguard Circle, once per turn. This ability's cost is reduced by 1 Soul Blast for each rearguard with Sorcerer or Witch in its card name that you called during this turn. Soul Blast 13, until end of turn, all of your units with Sorcerer or Witch in its card name get plus 10k and plus 1 critical to end of turn. Now here's the part that I misplayed with. For so long, because the once per turn thing was right next to the Soul Blast reduction cost, I thought that its reduction was only by 1 for the whole entire turn. But I was wrong. It is counted multiple times. So if you called 6, it goes down to 7. And what sucks is that for so long, I thought that was only 1. So every time I was using the skill, I'd pay 12 soul for it. And it's not like I never lost you doing this, because thanks to this motherfucker, I never actually had to suffer from it. But yeah, not really a nice thing when you misplay. But now that I know that, I kill my opponents 10 times faster than I did before. So really good card, and it gives plus 10k and a crit to your whole front row. It's literally a front trigger and a critical trigger combined. Or no, everything on the front row just gets a free critical trigger. And that's really helpful. Oh no, it's everything in general gets a critical trigger. Well, fuck it. Because everything hits high numbers, so everything is guaranteedly going to hit in the 30s. This is where you just call down your field, hit for everything in the 30s, and your opponent dies. Hell, I killed my opponent at grade 2 with this. I forgot what my grade 2 rush was, but it was on... I had this on Van, I called this to rear, you can imagine Palmet was behind it. I attacked with it, put a Force 2 on Van, they took the Vanguard, they went to 3, they blocked the other rear guard. I rode into this next turn, put a Force 2 on the other rear guard, called my whole entire field to it, and this was before when I was still misplaying with it. Soul Blast 12, 10k and a crit to everything, so the Vanguard had an extra crit on it, so it had 3 crits. One of my Force 2s had a 3 crit, and then only one column didn't have 3 crit. I attacked with the Vanguard first, PG'd it, Twin Drive, first check crit, all effects to the thing that doesn't have triple crit, second check heal, recovering a damage, power to the thing that just got triple crit. Ran with 2 big columns, they couldn't guard either, and they just had to take it, and then they go to 6 really easily. Really nice budget card. This is literally 23 cents. Buy it. There is no reason why you cannot buy this. And then finally, the other skill. Act Vanguard Circle once per turn, counterblast 1, and return one of your rear guards with Sorcerer or Witch in its card name to your hand. If you fuck up with the PG, you can get it back. If you called it for the sake of calling it last turn. Your opponent didn't die, but you didn't die either, and you think, oh yeah, I think I need that PG back. Get it back. Or if you just want to rush out the first skill really quickly, you could just, I don't know, call this normally, soul charge 6. That's not good enough for you. Use the counterblast skill, bounce it back to hand. You know what? I think I'm going to call it again. Soul charge another 6, because fuck it. And you know, you can just get it back to loop it. So, really nice card. 4 copies, amazing budget card. I misplayed with it so many times, but I'm still good with it. And on to the gifts. So this is actually a deck that can go either way with gifts. It just depends. Do you want to kill your opponent quicker, or do you think they're going to last long enough to where setup is more important? And it can work with both ways, because this deck doesn't deck itself out very easily. Trust me, I know. We got it. Force 1. When acquired, you can put this marker on the Vanguard or Rearguard, and this unit gets plus 10k power during your turn. This is only needed at 4. Ignore this 5 right here. This is only needed at 4. And actually, no, you could actually use more than 4 because of Ashwell over here. But, yeah, Ashwell is very important to this deck. I do suggest calling it rapidly so you can get more Force gifts on the van, just to say fuck it. But Force 1, this is the setup one where if you think your opponent's going to last longer than 2 grade 3 turns against you, you can just spam out a bunch of Ashwells. Every time you ride normally, you just give it to a rear guard, then use the Ashwell skill to get Force gifts on the Vanguard, slowly set up, and then when you think your opponent's about to die or you think that you've got enough power to get over them, go all out, use the Soul Blast, God knows what number at this point, and get plus 10k in a crit to your field. Everything's hitting for very big numbers, and they all have 2 crits on them. So it's an optional card. Or you could pick Force 2. Say you want to kill your opponent quickly because their deck is like a control deck like Redora, which doesn't really affect this deck that much, or Chaos if you're for some reason playing Premium, or Chaos does actually, or when Chaos does get revealed, it does something about controlling or locking or stuff like that. You could use Force 2, or if you just want to kill your opponent quickly because you're in a rush for some reason, Force 2 is the option because you could just swing with Ashwa at grade 2, get a Force 2 on the Vanguard, and then next turn, ride the Vanguard, get a Force 2 on another rear guard, call it a whole field like I did, Soul Blast a bunch, get extra crits and 10k. Your opponent's going to go to high damage really quickly, putting you in the advantage, and you might just be able to kill them, like I did. Like I said, bullshit occurs. This deck is the definition of just bullshit happening multiple times in a row. And finally, the order that we've been talking about more or less for like the start of the video. Quick Shield. When one of your attacked units gets plus 5k power to end of battle, basically a 5k shield. And if you're wondering why there is no other order in this deck, it's because I hate using orders. I only use this because I have to. And even when I have it, I have literally had games where I've kept it in hand the whole time and I forgot it was there till I looked thoroughly at my hand to see it. I'm not joking, I genuinely do not give a shit about this card. But it still helps and I have some found respect for it, not much though. In every other order, I will never use. Like, the MLB one is the exception because I like MLB and it actually has something to correlate with MLB, like it names specific cards such as Blaster Dark, Blaster Blade, MLB, etc. And it can be gained back by effects such as Stardust Trumpeter. While other orders can't do that, and except for technically the Lyric one, and I am partially a Bermuda main, I will never build that deck ever unless someone pays me like $100 to do so. Then I'll pay Lyric. Then I'll build Lyric and possibly play it, but I'll only play it once. MLB is the only one I have the exception for. Every other order, in my personal opinion, is useless. I realize that they're good cards, but I just don't like putting them in the deck because I feel like they're a waste of space. That is my opinion on orders. Whether you have a different opinion or not, this is mine. So, yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. And I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguard.